Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. A guy I've been on his show. He goes by Weezy, and his podcast is What is Truth? And I was on his show a couple times. We talked about Aleister Crowley. We also talked about Sirhan and hypno programming. So you can check those out at his podcast, What is Truth, or mine, William Ramsey Investigates. But I followed his work, and he's done a lot of work on Abe, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and all the things surrounding it. That is really something else. What we're taught is just, one guy went into Ford's Theater and shot him and jumped off and got away and burnt up in a cabin. And oftentimes the larger elements and background are left out of this story, which is a very complex story with a lot of questions. And I've read the great Dave McGowan's work on Abe as well as his work on the moon and all this stuff. Some stuff was never made it into books, but you can see them serialized at his website. I think it's still Center for an Informed America that his daughter's running. So you can check that out. I'll try to bring it up, but I mean, it still stands the test of time. I've also posted all of the work that Visigoth has done, who passed away earlier this year, but he uh, did a think 13 episode version titled on the killing of Abe, and it's called "Who Ordered the Hit?" on quote honest unquote Abe, because Abe is much like Washington. These guys kind of get this sugar coating about their lives and their background. Abe was a little more nuanced and maybe not as honest, and he might have had some other facets to his personality. I think that's what Hansen said. I mean, a lot of people thought Abe was an infidel. He was not, had no fidelity towards Christianity in his works, which is interesting considering how great his speech writing was, and his writing was just incredible. It stands the test of time. Gettysburg Address, et al., all of his writings and works. But I invited Weezy on. I listened to his show. He talked about Abe, like I said. I listened to him for 4 hours today, talking to Monica Perez. I didn't know she was going to drop an episode today. The second part of their episode dropped today. So it's interesting timing. Maybe it's perfect timing. But we set this up about a week ago or 10 days ago. So everything's going to work out. But I'm delighted to have him on the show. So, Weezy, welcome to William Ramsey Investigates.
Mr. Ramsey, thank you for the invite. Always a pleasure to speak with you. And
Yeah, likewise.
yeah, it's this whole Lincoln thing is something that a lot of people don't really cover. And David McGowan is who inspired me to go down this rabbit hole. And I've been trying to basically keep his name out there as little as my reach is. I always try to remind people that I'm heavily inspired by the great late David McGowan's work. The way I view my world is hugely inspired, through his lens. So he was a genius in breaking down things that most people would accept as gospel and point out, look at this little thing. And once he pointed those little things out, everything just made more sense. And a lot of things are not what they appear to be. And that's no different here with the Lincoln assassination.
Yeah. So what kind of turned the key for you? Like at what point it was from Dave's work that you really kind of wanted to become an expert about the assassination? Is that correct?
Well, I started reading the book, and I think like most people, the as much knowledge as I had of the whole Lincoln deal was that there was a famous actor named John Wilkes Booth that hated Lincoln so much that he decided to go shoot Lincoln in the theater. He jumps down, yells something, escapes. And that is really, in a nutshell, all I knew. And I think the vast majority of folks probably only have that. So when I started reading McGowan's take on it, I'm like, he started pointing out how this person's related to this person. And I didn't even realize that the entire thing is actually labeled a conspiracy. There's a lot more moving parts to it. And what you start to realize is that the probably, and this is what I believe, the reason you don't hear too much about it is because the entire story starts to fall apart real quick under further scrutiny. So I started reading McGowan's takes on it, and I enjoyed it so much that I ended up doing a audiobook version that I have on my podcast as well, and it's nestled around episode 169 for anyone interested. Um, I made a few mistakes in some pronunciations and whatnot. It was my first stab at an audiobook, but if anyone's interested, it's there. Uh, but yeah, that's what it was realizing that the whole Lincoln assassination, there was way much more to the story than just the angry actor that hated Booth.
Right. I mean, that's the
Or
whole thing.
I'm
You know?
sorry, hated Lincoln. I'm sorry.
Right, but Booth was kind of always an activist. Like Booth himself was an interesting guy. Like the shootings took place when he was only 26, but he had lived a pretty life. Like there was supposed to be a Lincoln plot in Baltimore, I think, in 1861. So much like many other famous politicians, people were trying to get Lincoln often, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you'll often hear that um you'll have some people say that he was struggling as an actor, or a lot of people will kind of view Wilkes Booth as a terrible guy, just a super racist guy. But the interesting thing is, even during his escape, he gets helped by several black folks along the way. So I'm like, you guys make him out to be as the most racist guy out there, and this is why he hated Lincoln. And yet, even the official story talks about him getting helped by black folks along the way, which I thought was rather interesting.
Right. So he's a little bit more nuanced. I mean, but he's from like he's sophisticated. He is his dad is like a notable Shakespearean actor in New York City. Like, so he's like doing these or surrounded by this acting family that is
His dad's
traveling.
name is Junius
Right,
Brutus.
right.
Junius Brutus, just like the guy that orchestrated the hit on Julius Caesar, a couple millennia earlier.
It's weird how this kind of like fictional past, the Shakespearean stuff, like they would did Julius Caesar too, right? So like you have Junius Brutus doing all these Shakespearean plays, and then it plays out this kind of like, thus be it ever to tyranny and freedom and all this stuff like that is played into this event too. And then it seems like in John Wilkes Booth's mind as well. So he wasn't a he and I know there's pictures of him at the White House too. Like so he wasn't some guy like people put him in a lone nut category like Oswald, who was around a lot of these people. Oswald during JFK, but Booth was much like that. He disguised himself and went to the hanging of John
John Brown.
Brown. Yeah.
Yep.
So right at the beginning, I think it's either 59 or 60. So these are the predicates before the Civil War broke out was Brown's hanging, Harper's Ferry. He was hung at Jonestown, which is close to Harper's Ferry, and then the shelling of Fort Sumter. But like these were crucial events, so he was there. Like
He was there at the second inauguration of Lincoln too.
that's right. That's
and
what I remember.
and
He's pictured there. His picture is there,
yeah,
right?
well, check this out, William. The photographer of that picture, Cat, just so happened to get to grab Abraham Lincoln and Wilkes Booth in the same photo was Alexander Gardner. Alexander Gardner also was the one to photograph all those beautiful mug shots of everyone else. Alexander Gardner also photographed Lincoln's death face. Alexander Gardner also photographed John Wilkes Booth's death plate, which was later ordered destroyed by Edwin Stanton. I bring that up because we have a similar guy today in 2025 that just gets lucky with these kind of things. He goes by the name of Mr. Douglas Mills. Douglas Mills photographed George Bush the morning of 9/11 in Sarasota. He also photographed allegedly the magic bullet that whizzed by Trump's ear and caught the Iwo Jima picture. Douglas Mills is the modern day Alexander Gardner.
Wow, so it's like these things are rhyme. They're very similar. And for
Yeah.
people who don't know what you're talking about, there are famous mug shots of all of the conspirators for Lincoln assassination. So you've got this guy Gardner around, and then Mills is in the right place at the right time over and over again. You think
Yeah.
that the Trump killing was fake, like it's a staged event, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
much
I
like
don't.
the Seward attack or whatever.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, Cash Patel made a post on X saying that he spoke with Donald Trump and told Donald Trump that they basically case is closed, and Donald Trump agreed with it. That to me was the all I needed to hear, because Donald Trump is one of these loud guys. He brags about everything, and if there was something more nefarious or whatever, don't you think he would have like, oh, they almost killed me. Let's dig into it even further. He
Right.
just,
No, it is a tell. These are tells. Like,
yeah,
because Crooks is a very strange guy, and even I've seen Tucker Carlson got his social media stuff. So there was more to that story that came out in the public, but like just saying we're done and this guy who took a shot at me, that means somebody died on that roof, whether it was Crooks or somebody else, and then Comparatori's dead.
yeah,
But
that's possible. But
there's other people shot. I mean, I've seen the live videos. It's hard to believe that that's all staged. Like it would
no,
have been brilliant freaking staging because those people went down. They're bleeding all over the place,
yeah,
and
I
other
think
the
with
witnesses said confirmed it too.
yeah, I think with a lot of these events, I mean, you could have something like a 9/11 where thousands die. You could have other events where nothing really happens, and then you could have a mix of the two. You know what I mean? So, uh, no two events are exactly alike, is what I
This
would
is
say.
true. They keep happening. 10/7 was it. I think 10/7 was an inside job, and
Oh
they
yeah,
let
yeah.
people die. I mean,
Even the Bondi Beach
Bondi
stuff,
Beach is
that
questionable, right?
Bondi, yeah,
Bondi.
a lot of funny business going on there.
Some of these other weird shootings might be staged. Like we don't know. Like they're used for events like this Bondi Beach. They're going to use Bondi as like a reason to curtail free speech. So it's like
Free
I can
speech
see
and
that.
even
Yeah,
gun laws. Their gun laws are already atrocious as it is, and they're just going to even tighten up the grip on there. So yeah, I mean, this is what McGowan. I first found McGowan's work when he covered the Boston Marathon bombing, and he did that epic show. And a lot of people were arguing, well, the Sarnav brothers are this, and then their uncle's tied with intelligence, and there's weird. And McGowan said, wait a minute, that's cool and all, but let's zero in on the actual event, and just broke it down in the magnificent way that he did. And I guess tying it into the Lincoln assassination, he does a lot of that. He brings that same lens into the whole story. You know, when it comes to the Lincoln assassination, like I said at the very beginning, it's actually admitted that it was a conspiracy, that there was a plot. And prior to April 14th of 1865, when Lincoln got shot, um, we are told that Booth was already planning to essentially kidnap Lincoln. He wanted to kidnap Lincoln. The Confederates did not have the manpower that the Union had. They also didn't have the financial means that the Union had. So every soldier that they could get was valuable. It helped for their cause. So early on in the Civil War, the Union and the South would engage in prisoner swaps, and eventually the Union realized that prisoner swaps greatly benefited the South more than it did the Union. And so at a certain point, the Union stopped really engaging in prisoner swaps. And I did a show on Andersonville just last weekend, talking about the atrocious conditions at the Andersonville prison. But we are told that Booth initially wanted to kidnap Lincoln because he figured if we kidnap Lincoln, we could get a ton of prisoners exchanged. You know what I mean? So that was the goal. You get a ton of prisoners exchanged. They're gonna get pumped right back into war against the Union, and it's gonna help out the South greatly, immensely. We are told and this is all official narrative. This isn't me speculating. I'm gonna give you the official. I want to just go over the official narrative, and then we can break it down from there. But before I start, you've got anything, Mr.
no,
Ramsey?
go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah, and I also want to give a teaser. So my views are, I try to carry the McGowan torch. So I don't believe John Wilkes Booth was the shooter. I'm going to give a little teaser. I believe Henry Rathbone was the most likely shooter, and there was an attack on William Seward's mansion. I don't believe that attack ever took place. So I'm just giving a teaser, and I feel I can make a strong case and maybe put some reasonable doubt in your minds if you have believed the official story for all all these years ever since you were a little kid. I think with the stuff we talk about tonight, you are really going to have to take a second look and question everything you've been taught.
Right. And what have we been taught? There were like supposed to be concerted attacks throughout DC, right? So there's supposed to be other attacks like,
Simultaneous.
yeah, simultaneous. Yeah.
Yeah, like 9/11. No different than 9/11. The So we are told that on the so I'm getting a little ahead. Prior to the actual assassination of Lincoln, Booth wanted to kidnap people or kidnap Lincoln, and he recruited these ragtag band of co-conspirators. Amongst them, John Surratt Jr., who was a son of Mary Surratt, who had a boarding home near Ford's Theater, and amongst several others. And they would get together, and they allegedly, according to the official narrative, they all agreed to kidnap him. It wasn't until the day of Friday the 14th, which was a Good Friday, by the way, on April, that Booth just said, "You know what? I'm going to kill Lincoln today." So no plan, no. He just woke up that morning. This is not me saying it. This is the official
The
tale.
official tales, like
Yeah.
just angry,
So
right?
yeah, and allegedly because Lee had surrendered to Grant at Appomattox on the 9th, on April 9th. And so the war was effectively over. So if they kidnap Lincoln, what good does it do now? That's what we're told. So now Booth is really, really angry. He has all this hate in his heart, just like those people living in Afghanistani caves had all this hate towards America. It's always hate with all these narratives. Even in today, this person
Tyler Robinson,
hated.
Yeah.
Hate. It's always hate.
Yeah.
That's why as soon as I hear that narrative being played out, my mind already checks out. But we are told Booth had so much hate towards Lincoln, and he was angry that on Friday morning he wakes up, I'm going to kill Lincoln. So a few days prior, Ford's Theater had already been making flyers that Ulysses S. Grant was going to be attending the play on Friday night. Lincoln was going to be there, but the biggest get was Ulysses S. Grant. People were already used to seeing Lincoln around town, so Ulysses S. Grant was the hero, of the story. So in reality, people that were showing up were there to see Ulysses S. Grant. You have
FYI,
to.
just a personal note, I am related to Ulysses S. Grant by his wife. So I'm
Oh,
actually totally related to. That's like the
okay.
most famous person I'm related to.
All right, so I won't go too hard on Mr.
It's
Grant.
okay. He was a good general. I don't know if he was a great president, but that's a whole nother
Yeah,
show. It's a whole nother
yeah,
show.
100%. Yeah, so like I was telling you, Ford's Theater was already making posters that and they had him as the main attraction, Ulysses S. Grant. And so Friday comes along, and Booth wakes up, and today's going to be the day I decide to kill Lincoln. Somehow, we don't have any evidence for this, but the official story says that he gets in touch with Lewis Payne Powell, George Atzerodt, and Davy Harold. He tells Lewis Payne Powell. Lewis Payne Powell was the youngest of the co-conspirators. He was a 6'1" Alabama boy that grew up in Florida. He was also a Gettysburg battle veteran. He allegedly he got injured during the Gettysburg battle, and he was made into a POW by the Union. And at some point, he escapes. He escapes the Union prison camp and makes his way down to Maryland, and is out there hanging out, apparently just hanging out in Maryland. And there's no evidence how, if he even was related. This is gonna, I'm bringing this up because it's gonna make a lot of sense when I try to explain why I don't believe the Seward attack ever happened. But even the stories as how he came across John Wilkes Booth, it's not very well known. But Lewis Payne Powell was a young kid, handsome devil, looks like a Calvin Klein model. I've seen some colorized pictures of him, and just a that's Boston Corbett. There's Henry Rathbone.
Rathbone,
Yeah,
Lincoln, the son Robert Todd. Like
Robert.
became a
Oh,
great jurist.
Robert Todd is a sketchy guy. Um, but so Lewis Payne Powell gets assigned. So the plan is hatched on that Friday morning by Booth that he's gonna have Lewis Payne Powell and David Lee Harold to go down to the Seward Mansion and attack at roughly around 10:15 at night. He tells George Atzerodt, who's a little heavy set German immigrant guy. He was from Germany, but apparently they moved to the States when he was 8 years old, and he had the task of killing Vice President Andrew Johnson. And John Wilkes Booth, we are told, wanted the big prize for himself. He was going to go at Lincoln. And his plan was to go at it with a single shot Derringer and a Bowie knife. This is the official narrative. So right around 10:15, there's the play that was being seen by the people at Ford's Theater was Our American Cousin, which is about basically a rambunctious American and his posh English relatives, I suppose. And there's a line in the play where he basically calls a one of the women in the play a slur, I suppose you can call it. and that makes everyone erupt into laughter. And so the reason Booth chose 10:15 was that's when the line was delivered and people were going to be laughing hilariously, and that would have kind of hidden the gunshot, the sound of the gunshot. That's what we are told. He comes in, shoots Lincoln in the left ear, and the bullet gets lodged right under the right eyeball socket. But because Lincoln is close to the left wall, historians say that Lincoln turned his head at just the wrong moment. And that's what got him killed. And if we remember, Trump turned his head at the right moment and he survives. He wasn't like that loser Lincoln. There's so many similarities to today's climate. It's hilarious. But anyways, after he does that, Henry Rathbone, who is also in that presidential box, along with Mary Todd Lincoln and his stepsister, fiance Clara Harris, they're all in the presidential box with Lincoln. Booth, after shooting Lincoln, yells "freedom." He then turns his knife, flashes at Rathbone. Rathbone tries to wrestle with him. Allegedly, Rathbone receives a cut between the shoulder and the elbow, so right around his left bicep is where he receives a gash, allegedly. Booth then gets on top of the box there on the balcony and jumps about 10 feet down onto the stage. There is no consensus on this, but most people will say that's when Booth broke his leg. Others will say he broke his leg later on during the getaway. Dr. Mudd, who attended his leg during the getaway, says that he didn't even have a very serious leg injury. It was basically a sprain. So there's three different versions. So you choose whatever version you want. And there's so many parts like these, where there is no consensus, where people just pick and choose which version that they want to believe in. And this is what should make everyone and anyone question it all. You know what I mean? They don't have consensus on anything. And so the broken leg one is a big one. There is no consensus. But most people will say that's when he broke his leg. He jumps down, he yells. Most people will say he yelled "Sic Semper Tyrannis." Some say he yelled "The South is avenged." Some say he said both of those things. There is no consensus. There's a great book by Timothy S. Good called "We Saw Lincoln Shot," which has 100 eyewitness testimonies from the people that claim they saw the event at Ford's Theater. one of the interesting things that a lot of those witnesses say is that quite a few of them say we thought it was part of the play. Like
Wow.
it sounds like in today's language that almost sounds like we thought this was fake. Like it was, they didn't even realize what had gone on. But this is the official story. After Booth does that, he sprints. So we get told he broke his leg, but allegedly he sprints out, gets on a horse in the alleyway in the back of the theater, gallops about 8 miles down the road in the dead of night, meets up with Davy Harold. They both cross the Navy Yard Bridge, even though should have been under lockdown, but they're allowed to cross the Navy Yard Bridge, and a 12-day chase ensues. Right around this time, when around 10:15, we are told, as part of the simultaneous attack, that Lewis Payne Powell goes to the Seward Mansion, which was right next door neighbors to the White House, right there on Lafayette Square Park. The house no longer exists. It's been knocked down. It got knocked down in 1890. And I believe it got knocked down because I don't think anything ever took place there. And
that's what they do. If there's something like scandalous involved in any of these assassinations, they immediately clean it up. I saw the same thing. They did it for the Reagan assassination. They did it for Kirk. They've done so many quick cleanup jobs in 9/11. Yeah.
Yeah, the steel beams sent to China, immediately, an active crime scene, and they're already getting rid of the evidence. Yeah, that's why that's extremely suspect. But we're told that Lewis Payne Powell goes to the Seward house, has a little box of medicine, allegedly, meets into the houseboy, answers the door. Lewis Payne Powell tells him that he's got some medicine for William Seward. William Seward was the Secretary of State, Lincoln Secretary of State. A couple of little important things about William Seward, because some people may not know very much of the man. But a few weeks ago, we had Thanksgiving. William Seward was the one who drafted the Thanksgiving Proclamation of 1863. William Seward is largely credited for acquiring Alaska. And William Seward was also a member of the anti-Masonic Party, which was a thing back then. I bring these up because even people that have conspiratorial leanings regarding the Lincoln assassination, they will still believe that Seward was an actual victim that night. So even though they have conspiratorial leanings, they take it as gospel, as the official story. And I think part of the reason is because Seward was part of the anti-Masonic Party.
So he was involved in the William Morgan scandal. He's from upstate New York. So I've actually, in my podcast, I've done 2 shows on out of copyright book about the William Morgan scandal, which coincides with Masonry and Joseph Smith and burnt over ground,
and there's a lot of fakery going on there. Yeah, there's theories whether he ever got killed and he just
that's escaped. Another Masonic plot. I mean, when Joseph Smith got killed, he said a Masonic statement, which was, "Is there no mercy for the widow's son?" or something like that, which is super Masonic. The Masonic elements that influenced Mormonism should not be in dispute. They're obvious.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've had Heidi Love on my show. We did a show on Mormonism. She's awesome when it comes to that. And so that's William Seward. So William Seward, we are told, conveniently, in my opinion, 2 weeks prior to this attack on the 14th, he allegedly got in a horse carriage accident. This horse carriage accident left him disfigured on the face, and they put a neck brace around his neck. And so he is comatose, recovering from his injuries from that carriage attack 2 weeks prior. And incidentally, he got that carriage accident. This is what I mean. I've done so much further research just to only further make McGowan's case of nothing happening at the Seward house. And another awesome researcher is Don Thomas. Don Thomas wrote the book Why Lincoln Had to Die. He wrote another book, Why Booth Had to Die. And he does fabulous research because he he actually reads the primary source documents. He goes through the National Archives, reads it, has all that evidence. I disagree with his conclusions, but that's not me talking bad about him. He's a great researcher. I feel his research inadvertently only proves McGowan's original
Interesting.
thesis. Yeah, and I'll give you a few examples. But Don Thomas, in his book, writes that William Seward, uh, the he got in a carriage accident after visiting with Edwin Stanton regarding. So William Seward had envoys in Europe. You know, he had spies in Europe that would constantly feed him information, return information back to him, because the South had a huge connection to Europe, you know, at the time. So he had a lot of spies down there, and they were feeding him information. Well, apparently Seward had received some death threats that there were going to be some European assassins heading over to Maryland to kill Seward. So this scared the crap out of Seward. So Seward went to Edwin Stanton to let him know about his concerns. And this is all documented. This is through Don Thomas's work. And after meeting with Edwin Stanton, that's when he gets in his carriage accident. To me, the way I interpret this is he got scared crap, and this is probably when the plot to have Lincoln killed that night really started, you know, taking form. And so part of it, oh yeah, we're gonna say you got into a little carriage accident here, you know, and you're gonna be laying in bed, because the official story tells us that uh, William Seward is laying in bed comatose, essentially recovering from this alleged carriage accident. Louis Payne Powell uh, knocks on the door of the Seward mansion. Houseboy Bell greets him there, doesn't want to let him in, but Powell, a big dude, just kind of pushes the kid out of the way and starts making his way to the third room, or to the third story. Seward had a 3-story, 30-room mansion. One of the questions that McGowan asked is, how in the hell did Louis Payne Powell know to immediately start heading up to the third floor in a 3-story, 30-room mansion? How did he know how to beeline it up there? Which is a very legitimate question, which most historians will just casually just mention it and make no big deal out of it. Like it's just normal behavior. On his way upstairs, he encounters one of the Seward sons, and all the children, all the Seward children were of military age, so they weren't kids. So he encounters Frederick Seward, and Frederick Seward kind of stops Powell and says, "Hey, what are you doing? You know, you're walking too heavy. You know, my dad is trying to rest." Lewis Powell says, I need to hand deliver this medicine to William Seward. I need, you know, these instructions were given to me by Dr. Verdi, and I have to see him in person. So they start getting a little argument, and we are told Louis Payne Powell pretends he starts heading back down. He then turns around, pulls a gun out, puts the gun to Frederick's head, pulls the trigger. Fortunately for Frederick, the gun misfires. So then Louis Payne Powell lifts up the gun high up in the air and delivers a crushing blow. Hits him so hard that brain matter comes out of Frederick Seward's head, but he survives. He doesn't die. He gets knocked out. This commotion makes Fanny Seward pop her head out, allegedly. This is the official story. And that gives away, in turn, the position to where her dad is, you know. So Louis Payne Powell then goes into that room. He encounters the nurse, George Robinson, gets in a scuffle with him, beats the crap out of him. He then jumps on William Seward, who is on the bed, comatose, we are told, and starts slashing at Seward. Seward, boom, 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 boom. He just beats the crap out of everyone else, and he starts slashing at this guy that's essentially a vegetable for all intents and purposes. But luckily, William Seward's neck brace parries all those blows, and he survives the attack miraculously. At this point in time, another Seward son comes in. Augustus Seward comes in. And him and Robinson, the nurse gets back up. They both manage to get Lewis Payne Powell off of their dad, and they shove him out of the door. The two men shove him out the door. So then Lewis Payne Powell, then we are told, makes his way downstairs. He runs into another guy named Emmerich Hansel, who supposedly was armed as well, but apparently Lewis Payne Powell stabs him and beats the crap out of him. Then Lewis Payne Powell gets on his horse. Davy Harold was supposed to be there, but apparently we are told Davy Harold got chickened out when he heard the screams and the commotion that he left Lewis Payne Powell alone. Lewis Payne Powell now is in DC at night, doesn't know the area. He was the only true Southerner of all the co-conspirators. The rest of them were all from the Maryland area. So Lewis Payne Powell, we are told, hides in trees for a couple of days. He just spends the night. And then a couple of days later, he is arrested as he just, at the wrong time, poor guy, just walks as Mary Surratt is getting interviewed by the police around 11 o'clock at night. And he's got we are told, a bloody shirt. And the cops ask him, "What are you doing out here?" "Oh, I'm out here digging ditches." He gets arrested. There you go. There's Lewis Payne Powell with
in
that
a Masonic
coat.
stance too, right there on the far right. That means he's on the square.
Yeah, and that coat was planted. Don Thomas, through original primary source documents, he finds a police report where when they arrested him with a brand new coat with no bloodstains, a hat with no bloodstains, and he had a Colt revolver, which was a Union gun. But at the Seward home, they said his bloody hat was there, his bloody coat was there, and he used a Whitney revolver, which was a Confederate gun. So they planted evidence. This is what I mean. Don Thomas inadvertently proves McGowan's theory by showing that Lewis Payne Powell was framed.
Wow.
He was clearly framed. They planted these, look at that coat, nice and shiny and everything. And if you want to look at those other pictures of Lewis Payne Powell, another thing McGowan says is that look for any scratches on Lewis Payne Powell.
Whatever, right?
Yeah, look at that colored one there. Is probably a little easier. But there's no scratches, no signs of any fighting, or if you look at his hands, no scratches on any of him. But this guy beats up a crap ton of people that night, and not a single scratch on the guy. See that colored one?
Yeah. I'm just trying to get it. Certainly not on his neck.
And yeah, and nowhere on his hands either. So this is what we're told. He later gets he was one of the ones that got hung later on, and I feel he was 100% patsy. Wow. Poor kid. But and at 10:15 that night, like I was telling you, George Atzerodt, the German guy, was due to kill Vice President Johnson, who was staying at the Kirkwood Hotel. We are told that George Atzerodt chickens out, instead goes downstairs to the bar and gets drunk and just decides not to go with it. And he gets hung, even though he chickened out, didn't participate in the actual murders. He was hung. There's George Atzerodt. That, in a very, very quick nutshell, is the official story. Now, the problems with it abound. And I can focus on, the Ford Theater or the Lewis Payne Powell, maybe a little bit, give you a little teaser for both of them. But that's pretty much it. Where would you like me to head down now?
Tell your story. I mean, if this isn't it, I mean, to Thomas' position, his thesis is that these guys were all set up by people within the Union to get rid of Lincoln, and these guys were all kind of like stooges, patsies, people manipulated, right? Isn't that his kind of view? Yeah.
Well, McGowan says in his book that he thinks it's very similar to today's climate, where both sides are really there's a bigger puppet master that's pulling all these strings. Doesn't matter if you have a Joe Biden or a Donald Trump, it's all the same nonsense. And so McGowan is That's what he takes out of it. McGowan doesn't say it was just a Union plot. He feels that it was a combination of the two, uh, and it when you look at today's wars, Vietnam War. Ashley was in the live chat. I saw her earlier, but we did a show on the Vietnam War a few weeks back. These are wars that the money makers want to keep going no matter the cost. They don't care about the people dying. They'll throw in your kid, my kids into the meat grinders as long as the money's coming in. When we hear about the Civil War, we and they teach us about McClellan. McClellan had all these times to pounce on the South, but he was indecisive. He was indecisive. He was. I'm starting to think that was done on purpose to drag the son of a bitch out, make money. There was people making money on both sides. Names that you and I will never be. We'll never really know these people. You know, the real puppet masters.
Right.
When you see these, you know, when we hear about these names, those are puppets. Those are puppets, all of them. Doesn't matter, like I said, if it was a Lincoln or in today's climate, a Joe Biden or Donald Trump, they're all puppets. A Bill Gates, even. Some people tend to think that these guys are the elites and they're the ones calling the shots. It doesn't work like that. There's people above them that we will never know their identities, and that's kind of the angle McGowan takes, and I'm in agreement with that.
Right. It's always the bankers or somebody making money. There's huge loans and tax outlays for so many things. So if you have if you're a moral leper, warfare is a great moneymaker, right? Because people are desperate and they go into debt and all kinds of stuff. It's
Right.
crazy. So then, if this is the kind of high school version of the Abraham Lincoln assassination, what do you think the true thing is? There's so many like uh, dark elements in this. Like there's like we know for a fact that Wilkes Booth was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. He was initiated in Baltimore in 1960, so he's involved in kind of secret society stuff. So it's like there's all kinds of murky things. There's kind of Masonic elements involved. Like I mean, it makes sense that even the Union people would want to get rid of Lincoln. Like after they were done. Like he completed his task. He was brought in probably to handle the war, and now the Civil War is over. Get rid of him. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not averse either to it being somewhat of. It could have been somewhat of a ritual. I mean, it was done on a Good Friday. You know, in a jam packed theater. Then you have the Shakespearean elements, you know, with John Wilkes Booth's dad, Junius Brutus. So there certainly could have been some kind of a ritualistic thing to it. But yeah, someone mentioned Rathbone. Yeah, my in studying McGowan's work, McGowan never says Henry Rathbone is the one that shot Lincoln, but McGowan was a master in writing his piece and feeding you breadcrumbs and letting you, the reader, piece it together. And so when you look at the official story and you break it down, it's just preposterous. You know, leading up to the presidential box at Ford's Theater, there should have been a guard, an armed guard, sitting outside. That was Joseph F. Parker, or is it Joseph or John F. Parker? John or Joseph, one of them, F. Parker. He was handpicked, chosen by Mary Todd Lincoln, of all people. Otto Eisenschimmel, in his book that he wrote in 1937, has the letterhead in White House stationery that Mary Todd Lincoln chose John F. Parker as the armed security guard outside Ford's Theater. This is huge, and official historians will just kind of gloss over it. It's huge because John F. Parker was the most demerited cop in the police force. So out of all the cops you could have chosen, You chose the one that was the most demerited. He had a history for using insolent language, vulgar and insolent language. He had a history of having relations with prostitutes. And when they charged them uh, money, he would arrest them and throw them in jail. And so this is the guy that they chose. According to the official story, that night, he did what he usually did. He got drunk and hung out with some prostitutes. But this is the guy that was handpicked by Mary Todd Lincoln. That's a huge red flag. Another red flag is if Booth planned this whole elaborate, thing to take out Lincoln, why did he take a one-shot Derringer when the multi-shot revolver was already in existence? He had a lot of money. He was well off. He was a well-to-do actor. He was well known. He had money. Money wasn't an issue. Why didn't he buy a few revolvers so in case that armed guard would have been there and it gave him any trouble, boom, here's one bullet snack for you, here's another bullet snack for you, pop, 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 like Rambo. But he's chose a one-shot Derringer.
Right. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And then Ulysses S. Grant, as I stated, was scheduled to be there. And last minute, he backs out, tells Lincoln, sorry, I can't make it. I have to catch the midnight train out of town to be with my kids Saturday morning. Other authors have stated that when they've studied the train schedules, if he would have waited to catch the 6 a.m. Saturday train, he would have been there at roughly around the same time as the midnight train. And the benefits of doing that is you get to sleep in your bed. You get to hang out with Abraham Lincoln. You get to soak in all that, the adoration of the crowd, if you will.
Right. Especially if it fits your political career too, right?
Yeah,
like he's on the pedestal, so-called, or the waiting box for the presidency. So why would you eschew that opportunity for like a public relations boost?
And I know you said he's there's some relation there, so I'll try to be nice, but I feel he's at the very least he knew what was going to happen that night, and that's why he took off. Similar to Larry Silverstein deciding to get a haircut. He was at the Twin Towers every damn day, but that morning, for whatever reason, he wanted to get a haircut, and lucky old Larry. And so Ulysses S. Grant, I think, at the very least, knew stuff was going to go down and he didn't want no part of it. So let's take the midnight train. It seems to make sense. The midnight train, I'm going to get out. You're going to snuff not just anyone, the president of the United States, and Abraham Lincoln. You're going to snuff him. So extremely suspect behavior. So then the next choice was going to be Thomas Eckert. Thomas Eckert was the assistant secretary of war, right below Edwin Stanton. Thomas Eckert was a large fella, 6'4", massive dude. So now in the presidential box, had he shown up, now you have two massive dudes. And with Wilkes Booth only armed with a one-shot Derringer, a big dude like Thomas Eckert would have made mincemeat out of little John Wilkes Booth. You know what I mean? But Thomas Eckert gets told by Stanton that he is busy that night. Thomas Eckert was in charge of the telegraph service that night. And guess what? That night, the telegraph service goes down. Right. Kind of like the cameras going down on Epstein's jail cell that night, or the camera's not working and getting the Pentagon planes hitting. It's crazy how these weird improbabilities just happen with these high-profile events. But yeah, Thomas Eckert is in charge of the telegraph lines, says he's busy. That's why he can't make it, can't be there with Lincoln, and yet they go down anyways. So then we have the third string, and that is Henry Rathbone. Henry Rathbone is my suspect. Like I said, it's funny. He wasn't the first choice. He wasn't the secondary choice. He was, further down the draft line as a choice. Henry Rathbone's an interesting character because a few years afterwards, after the Lincoln assassination, he moves with his now sister, sister wife, Clara Harris, they moved down to Germany. In Germany, he ends up killing his wife. He then grabs a knife and stabs himself. He tells the authorities that someone killed his wife and they try to kill him. The German authorities don't believe it and they throw him in the loony bin. This is important because what happened that night at Ford's Theater, we're told that John Wilkes Booth slashed at Henry Rathbone, cut him on the left bicep. Right? So with this case happening a few years later, we now have a precedent that he is capable of murder and self-inflicted knife wounds, as David McGowan puts it. And so that's a key piece to the puzzle. Official narrative historians will say, well, he probably had PTSD, from feeling bad that he didn't do more for Lincoln. That's what they'll tell you. But let's make our case a little bit more bulletproof. One of the biggest smoking guns that McGowan quickly pieces together is when you look at Henry Rathbone's depositions. He gave 2 depositions in 1865 and one in 1867 for the John Surratt Jr. trial. All 3 depositions are essentially word for word verbatim, as if he was reciting a memorized script. This is what McGowan points out. Why in the world would you have to give word for word, verbatim, memorized script types of depositions at any time? Why would you have to do that? Unless, of course, you're staying within the script. So it's interesting that the actor, we're told John Wilkes Booth, the actor, is the one that killed Lincoln, but I think there's more probable cause that it was Henry Rathbone was the actor, with his memorized script, repeating word for word. It is insane. And anyone, like I mentioned the book by Timothy S. Good, We Saw Lincoln Shot. They have in that book both of the 1865 depositions. Don't take my word for it. Don't take David McGowan's word for it. Read the depositions yourself, and they are word for word verbatim. And I think that's one of the bigger smoking guns. We're also told that when Wilkes Booth comes in, he wedges the door shut. McGowan suggests that how do we know this wasn't wedged shut by Henry Rathbone in order to stage the scene even further and keep the audience at bay while everything takes place? Because I've been to Ford's Theater. I was there in April of this year of 2025 for the 160 year anniversary.
Wow.
And I sat there in Ford's Theater because I've been replaying this attack in my head over and over and over and over and over again. And it just doesn't make sense. We're told he came in with a one-shot Derringer, Wilkes Booth. According to Henry Rathbone, the door next to Lincoln was open the whole time. But Henry Rathbone was sat slightly behind everyone. And when you're in a dark room and there's some light outside, you can, if someone opens the door a little bit, what's going to happen? That light is going to go into that dark room. You know what I mean? You're going to notice someone coming in. And so no one saw Wilkes Booth coming in. He was also armed with a one-shot Derringer and a Bowie knife on the right, or I'm sorry, he must have had the knife on the left hand because he was a right-hander, had the gun with the right hand. But he also wedged the door shut. What does that tell you? He had to put his weapons down at some point in his pocket or whatever, get that wedge to put it on the door. That doesn't make any dang sense. You know what I mean? It's just little things like these that you start to really, really question it all. Another part of it is after the assassination, everyone's talking John Wilkes Booth. But when you look at the testimonies from that very night, there's really only one guy that definitively says it was John Wilkes Booth. Many of the other people didn't really know what was going on. They couldn't even, they didn't even mention John Wilkes Booth. And we're talking about that from that very night, testimonies from that night. Later on, oh yeah, it was definitely John Wilkes Booth. Same thing happened at at the Seward home. At the Seward home, at the William Seward home, Edwin Stanton sends out telegraphs that the attacker was John Surratt Jr. There were even posters made that John Wilkes Booth, um, John Surratt Jr., and Davy Harold were the fugitives on the run. George Robinson, the nurse in the Seward home, initially said that the attacker had had whiskers and a mustache. The only one that fits that description is John Surratt Jr. This is my own take on it. John Surratt Jr. fits the whiskers and the mustache profile. Lewis Payne Powell was always clean shaven. And like I said, the first telegraphs from Edwin Stanton said that the suspect was John Surratt Jr. The problem with that was that John Surratt Jr. was in New York at the time when this happened. So his alibi was airtight. He was nowhere near. So that's why I feel they had to frame Lewis Payne Powell. They had to find a different guy because their whole story that John Surratt Jr. attacked William Seward fell apart easily. And then by picking Lewis Payne Powell, a big kid, oh, well, if we're going to say this guy beat the crap out of everyone, this guy kind of fits the bill. He's a big and strong, rugged kid. Let's put him in the mix. But when I lost my train of thought. When it comes to Rathbone, I just feel the whole story doesn't make sense. The other thing that doesn't make sense is no one in that box, Mary Todd Lincoln or Clara Harris or even Rathbone, said a word. So Booth slashes, fights, jumps down onto the theater, yells "Sic Semper Tyrannis," allegedly, yells "The South is avenged." It wasn't until he said "The South is avenged" that Henry Rathbone finally speaks up and says, "Stop that, man." So it's almost like they allowed him to perform his lines before actually saying, "Stop that, man." Wouldn't it, I don't know, wouldn't it make sense, especially for the women, for Clara Harris or Mary Todd Lincoln, to be screaming the entire time? Or at the very least, when he jumped down, but they stayed quiet? None of the story makes any sense upon further scrutiny.
I wouldn't wasn't Mary Lincoln or supposedly like hysterical anyway? Wouldn't she scream or say something or shout out? Or I guess Lincoln had a lot of trouble with her, or she had trouble with him, I guess. But they didn't have like
very lovey-dovey.
Yeah, it wasn't that type of relationship, is my understanding.
Yeah, apparently she was a pain in the behind.
Yeah,
and the people that will justify Ulysses S. Grant bailing out last minute will often use Mary Todd Lincoln as the reason that his wife and Mary Todd Lincoln did not get along. That's how they'll justify him leaving at midnight. But that doesn't make sense because they had been announcing this for almost a damn week. But you're going to back out on the last couple of hours prior to this. You see what I'm saying? It makes that to me is not a good enough excuse. Mary Todd Lincoln, so there are rumors that Abraham Lincoln was probably gay.
Or bisexual, yeah.
Or bisexual. I don't care either way if he was straight or gay. To me, I don't care. But it would fit in with my thesis because that would make sense as to why Mary Todd didn't scream or didn't really care. Because Lincoln, if he was indeed gay, good riddance. He
had this very close relationship with another military officer, and they would go into some house by themselves. Like very. It wasn't like he was with a group. Like I think that's all attested to.
Yeah, in the Lincoln Papers, the way he spoke about Joshua Fry Speed, his best friend, Joshua Fry Speed and Lincoln used to sleep in the same bed when they were traveling together. And Lincoln defenders that say, "Oh, you're just bringing wokeism into this. This is revisionist." Explain to me, at what time period is it normal for two dudes to share a bed? You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm gonna be sharing a room with a friend because we got to split the hotel, one of us is sleeping on the floor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want any other dude in my bed. I don't care if it's the 1800s or 2025. That is not happening. But people will justify that. Joshua Fry Speed and Lincoln were super, super close. And this is even in the Lincoln papers uh, when Lincoln and Mary Todd were due to get married, they were engaged and they were due to get married. They had to postpone the marriage because Lincoln was so distraught that his buddy Joshua Fry Speed had moved out of town.
Oh, wow.
Postponing your wedding over that? That is highly sus. Now, I haven't been able to verify 100% if he was gay or not. That's the truth. But there is circumstantial evidence to lean that way. And so, and again, if he was indeed, it would only make my thesis a bit stronger.
Yeah, no, there's other stories. It's somebody different than Fry Speed is a guy that I remember during the Civil War. Like he had some kind of relationship with another dude. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's elements that it's not just some kind of woke history either. It's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah, there's definitely. Yeah, I listened to the audiobook A Short Life of Abraham Lincoln, written by his former private secretary, John George Nicolai. And it kind of gives a little more of a autobiographical, biography of Lincoln, from his childhood to his genealogy and so on and so forth. And yeah, even reading through that, he was a little too friendly with a lot of guys, back in his time. And so it makes you definitely scratch your head like, whoa. It almost seems like something else is going on around here.
He wouldn't be the first. John F. Kennedy had some relationship with some dude from Harvard who actually had a room at the White House. Like it's overlooked, but like I forgot what his buddy's name was, but he was always around JFK, who externally was,
Well, and then there's
heterosexual.
rumors of Barack Obama, and then
He's
recently,
gay, dude. He's definitely
yeah, and then and then Trump being mentored by Roy Cohn.
right. Just
Come
fever.
on,
Died of AIDS. Like he died of AIDS. Coin did.
Yeah, it's this is what I mean. Sometimes people ask me, why do you care? This happened 160 years ago. And the reason I care so much is because by knowing that history, even though I don't trust the history and I think it's manufactured, by learning of it, you can see the same patterns being played out today in today's climate.
Yeah. There's no question about it. So who
want me
do
to get into
you
the
who do
sewer?
you who do you think the core element of the people who wanted Lincoln dead were? Like people behind the scenes, like people behind the curtain?
Yeah, I think so. You had people like Mr. Chase, uh,
Is it Salmon
and
Chase? Salmon
yeah,
Chase?
Salmon Chase. I'm, the bankers and whatnot. But you also had Edwin Stanton. Edwin Stanton comes off to me kind of like a Dick Cheney type. He was a Secretary of War, and he was a super strange fella. There's reports of him exhuming one of his daughters, and pretty much setting up her corpse in his office for a time. Super weird guy. But people will say, "Oh, Edwin Stanton loved Lincoln. He loved him so much." But I feel that the radical Republicans didn't really see Lincoln in their plans. Lincoln, as the war was winding down, he was kind of making comments that he didn't really want to be too hard on the South. He was gonna try to have a softer reconstruction, and a lot of the radical Republicans really weren't on board with that. They wanted to hammer the South. Although I do feel some of these Southern elites were probably involved as well. Uh, People's whose names we will never know. Just like today, we don't know really who's pulling the strings. So I think
you're not supposed to in any of these assassinations. They always keep themselves arm's length, if not more length, away. So you never really find the real conspirators. But the conspiracies are constant in politics. Like people say, "Oh, you're a theorist." There's never not all politics is conspiratorial. It's just that way by nature in all of human history. So It just whether somebody gets shot or not. But you got to remember, even within political parties, people are jockeying for position and power. So, like people around Trump or whatever are always trying to, increase their authority and power and things like that. So, offing a president by your own party is very plausible. It's not that unusual.
Yeah, I mean, and Edwin Stanton allegedly was due in the original conspiracy to get assassinated. Ulysses S. Grant was due to get assassinated, but there's no evidence for any of those claims. I feel it's one of those things that the people involved in the conspiracy put their names in the ring so that you can kind of deflect any suspicion towards them. Like, how could he
Yeah.
be involved? He
It's
was
a
due to get
cover,
killed that night.
right? It's a cover, right? Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
So it's
yeah. I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of problems with the Lincoln assassination and the stories, and I mean, I've read the book that I did with Viz. Like Booth gets away. He has a double. It's plotted out. He's dead in this barn, and he goes and lives in India the rest of his life. I mean, the guy. It's. I think that's plausible. Like he literally went to San Francisco and got on a ship and bailed out of the United States with the help
yeah,
of these other people. The Knights of the Golden Circle, their concept was like a full Caribbean empire, like based on the South, until they got destroyed by the North, the Union. But like they were thinking on like imperial views,
yeah. Well,
they had
and
resources.
one little thing, the trial of the co-conspirators was a bunch of nonsense. The war was already over, and they were given military tribunals, and so the the whole outcome was rigged from the very beginning. You know, this is a time. Lincoln was definitely a tyrant. He was corrupt. Midnight raids were commonplace back then. People were thrown in jail without any warrants. The writ of habeas corpus was suspended, and so this is already acknowledged by even people that believe the official story.
Right.
But
Like
then
this is known. This is
they'll,
known truth. Yeah.
yeah, this is 100% known. And yet, when it comes to the military tribunal, oh yeah, the military tribunals were just, fair, and just. Wait a minute, hold up. You already know that this was a corrupt time in history, and you're gonna accept the military tribunals as fair and just. One of the interesting things that I like to bring up to these people that believe that it was right that these co-conspirators were hung and justice was served because they played a role in the death of Lincoln. I'd like to talk about John Surratt Jr. John Surratt Jr. When he read in the paper that Lincoln had been assassinated, he was in New York at the time. He then he booked it out of New York and went to Canada. From Canada, he went over to Liverpool, England. From Liverpool, he went to Rome. He got a job as a papal zouave in Rome. You can find his pictures. You can pull him up in his little Rome. It's a pretty cool picture. Just put John Surratt Jr. Zouave. Maybe they'll have. There we go. That's his papal bodyguard suit outfit. But so he gets a job there. The Vatican at some point gets wind. Apparently, when he's there in Rome, a guy from Maryland, from the Maryland area, recognizes him. What the hell? John Surratt's here. He's wanted in the States for the Lincoln assassination. So the Vatican even offers to turn him in. And the U.S. government's like, nah, we're okay. We're okay.
We're past this. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And Surratt Jr. eventually goes to Alexandria, Egypt. And it is in Alexandria, Egypt that he is finally arrested. And when they bring him to the States, they just take their sweet old time bringing him down. And people will say, what? Wait a minute. Well, they hung the other guys. John Surratt Jr. was the number 2. He was right below John Wilkes Booth in the conspiracy. He was the number 2 guy. And if they hung the lesser co-conspirators, sure enough, they're going to hang this guy. He was the number 2 guy. John Surratt Jr. in 1867 is acquitted. When he goes through civil trial, he's acquitted 8-4. So what does that tell you? If the second in command, of the alleged conspiracy was acquitted, what would have happened to the lesser co-conspirators under civil trial and not a military tribunal. You see what I'm saying? So that's a key one. And then the next question is, who was financing John Surratt Jr. for these elaborate trips? I mean, that's a pricey trip. That excursion from Canada to Liverpool, England, to Rome, to Egypt in today's climate is a lot of money. And this guy was doing it in the 1860s. Um, One of the other things about John Surratt Jr. is how very little about him we know. He died, he made it all the way into, I believe, his 70s. He died at a very old age. And reports say that he was touring the country talking about his role in the alleged conspiracy. But right before his death, he decided to burn his papers.
Interesting.
And so that's why we don't know much about him. In my opinion, this is my speculation, I think he knew everything that went on with the Lincoln assassination. And so all the stuff that pointed the fingers at radical Republicans or all the big wigs that were involved, yeah, we can't have that in the official record. So that's going to get burned. That's going to get burned. And that's going to get burned. You know what I mean?
Right. It makes perfect sense. They just burned all the records and everything like that. It makes perfect.
Just like Robert Todd Lincoln. Robert Todd Lincoln was the Lincoln son that is completely sus when it comes to a lot of these things. He was present at 3 presidential assassinations. He was there for his dad's assassination. He was present for the Garfield and McKinley assassinations. What are the odds? I can't remember if it was the Garfield or the McKinley one, but Robert Todd Lincoln is the one. I think it was the Garfield one. Remember, Garfield didn't die off of the gunshot wound immediately. He died due to medical malpractice, and the doctors were sticking in Garfield's wound, with their bare hands, unwashed hands, looking for the bullet, and that's what got him sick, and that's what eventually killed James Garfield. The doctor that was doing that was recommended by none other than Robert Todd Lincoln. Robert Todd Lincoln and Robert Todd Lincoln burned all his dad's papers, before his death. Why would you burn your dad's
They're invaluable.
papers?
Like there's no value. I mean, they're beyond valued. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Robert Todd is an extremely shady character. He also ended up putting Mary Todd in the loony bin later on.
I thought didn't Abraham Lincoln do that too? Weren't they always throwing Mary Lincoln into the loony bin? I thought that she was in the loony bin like 3 times.
Yeah, a lot of people. It seemed like it was more commonplace back then.
Yeah, like
a lot of people
going to the loony bin.
Yeah, but another interesting thing is, so Robert Todd Lincoln. So around the time of the assassination, John Wilkes Booth was engaged to Lucy Hale. Lucy Hale was the daughter of Senator Ira Hale, and Senator Hale was a hardcore abolitionist. And so for Lucy Hale to be dating the most racist pro-slavery guy is kind of funny. And she was engaged to him. It turns out that Robert Todd Lincoln was also having relations with Lucy Hale.
Interesting.
Yeah. But wait, there's more, Mr. Ramsey. There's a story too. This is official story stuff that at some point Robert Todd Lincoln is waiting for a train and he's about to fall into the train tracks. And Edwin Booth grabs him by the coat collar and brings him back in before he falls into the oncoming train. And Edwin Booth was the older brother of John Wilkes Booth. What are the odds of that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the other, I don't
small
know.
World. Yeah,
it's just everyone's rubbing shoulders.
Robert E. Lee was there when they put what's his face to death, when they put John Brown to death. So like John Wilkes Booth and Robert E. Lee and John Brown are all there at Charlestown or whatever.
The All-Star game.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Like, so these people are intertwined. It's just
the
really
All-Star psyops.
And apparently John Wilkes Booth was a ladies' man. Like he had like girls in every town is like the story. That's the rumor.
Yeah. Well, and apparently too, Edwin Booth was like, so John Wilkes Booth, they make him out to be as like the right wing conservative guy, you know, Southerner with Southern sympathies and racist. But Edwin Booth was more of the progressive liberal guy, loved by the Union. He was even given medals later on for saving Robert Todd Lincoln's life for, you know, falling on the railroad tracks. So this whole narrative that Booth came from a full-on racist family is not true, because it was kind of like you got Edwin, who was the polar opposite of John Wilkes Booth.
I think
How
Junius Brutus had 10 kids, so that's a huge brood of Booths.
yeah.
And it goes
Oh
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
and you and Monica mentioned Claire Booth Luce, right? All the way
Yep.
up to the Luce family. Like,
Yep.
you want to talk about involved in an assassination? Luce family was very much involved in the hiding of the Zapruder firm. Bought it
Sh-
from through time. Yeah,
and wife of Tony Blair, Sherry Booth.
she's part of the Booth family. Wow,
Yeah.
who was her? Who's her lineage from? Is it straight out of which Booth kid? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
she comes down that line. So that's the thing McGowan points out. Like, what are the odds? Like, when do you see these same lineages coming out from like the Sagaz family or the Sirhan family or the Lee Harvey's family? But in the John Wilkes Booth, you have this line that just comes out that, you know, even in today's climate, they're still well off. It's still they still hold power.
So wild. Who was Claire Booth's? That was her maiden name, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Anne Claire
that's
Booth was born in 1903. I'm trying to figure out who was. She was a she was a congressperson at one point. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I wonder who her dad was. I don't know. It's pretty wild. Yeah, it's just a small world. I don't know which Booth was her dad. I don't know.
Yeah, Sherry Blair.
See.
Sherry Blair, wife of Tony Blair. Yeah, she's a Booth as well. Yeah, it's super fascinating. I'm just intrigued by it. You know, the whole aspects of it. I mentioned the Seward Mansion attack earlier, and part of the reasons why I don't believe any of the stories, because the depositions, none of them make sense. How
What way? Why do you say that?
So there were several people in that mansion attack, right? Several victims. You had William Bell, the bellboy, in that house. You had Emmerich Hansel in that house. You had Augustus and Frederick Seward in that house. You had William Seward. You had Fanny Seward. That's at least 6 people in that house, and there was possibly even a couple more. And yet, the only depositions we get are 3 depositions. One from the houseboy that answered the door when Lewis Payne Powell comes by, but he didn't even see the attacks. He said he got freaked out by Lewis Payne Powell as soon as he opened the door and took off running to go get help. Now remember, the Seward Mansion is right there in Lafayette Square. Houseboy Bell, in his deposition, says he runs for help, yells murder, murder after he sees Lewis Payne Powell strike Frederick Seward when he's on the landing. He's running murder, murder, murder. Goes to the General Augur's headquarters, and he's looking for people. And then he returns. He doesn't see it. He doesn't find anyone. And when he returns, he just so happens to see Lewis Payne Powell get on his horse and leave. McGowan points out, think about it for a minute. This is a Friday night, a week out from the South surrendering to the Union. You had to imagine, especially right there in Lafayette Square, it had to be celebrations, fireworks every night. You know, this long, brutal war that had been raging, the bloodiest we've ever seen, is now over. And this kid runs out and can't find anyone. He's right there in the White House, right next door to the White House. He can't find a single person to come and help. This is what McGowan says, and people never bring this up. Like that's true. How how is it possible that the house is right there in Lafayette Square and he couldn't find a single person to come and assist? It makes zero sense. But anyways, that's one of the depositions we get. The other deposition is from the nurse that allegedly grapples with Powell in the William Seward bedroom, and Lewis Payne Powell gets the best of him. But in his deposition, he never once mentions Augustus Seward that allegedly came and helped him. He also says in his deposition that he never heard Lewis Powell say a word. He also says that a mystery man comes into the room and helps him ward off Lewis Payne Powell out of the room. Interesting, because he lived in that house. Why would you not be able to name this mystery man? If it would have been one of the Seward, McGowan points out, he would have easily said, oh yeah, it was Augustus Seward, it was Frederick Seward. He would have been able to name him, but he doesn't. And then when you look at Augustus Seward, this is the third deposition. Augustus Seward comes in and says that as soon as he comes into the room, he thought the nurse was delirious. He confuses. He says he couldn't tell if Powell was his dad or his dad was Powell or the nurse was Powell or his dad. He couldn't tell anyone apart. The biggest problem with that is William Seward was a little guy. Lewis Payne Powell was a big guy. How in the world do you get confused between the two of them, especially when one of them is your dad? You know what I'm saying? So there's many problems with these depositions, and this is what McGowan points out, that it just doesn't hold up. And then I mentioned earlier, if I'm not mistaken, about Don Thomas's work showing and proving that Lewis Payne Powell was framed. If this guy was indeed 100% guilty, why would you have to frame him? Why would you have to plant a coat on him? Why would you have to plant a gun on him? And then when you find out that there's another gun that you are planning to use for your case, you have to scrap it. Why would you have to do that? Why would you have to set him up if he was 100% guilty? There's no reason for it. And so to me, all those inconsistencies only point that it was an entirely manufactured affair. I don't know if we said this off air or not, but Emmerich Hansel was one of the guys that allegedly ends up dying from his wounds, you know, and this is the guy that gets stabbed in the back as Lewis Payne Powell was making his way down the stairs. Emmerich Hansel is allegedly dies from his wounds, but then 8 hours apart, another Emmerich Hansel dies. McGowan says, what are the odds that two guys named Emmerich Hansel die only 8 hours apart in DC at this time period when DC doesn't have this amount of people that it does today? You know, it's far less people. What are the freaking odds? And so what that lends one to speculate is, oh, they've probably saw the obituary of this other Emmerich Hansel, and they threw him into the story as a casualty of this alleged Seward attack.
Right. So they it was just like an opportunity. Like, oh, they just threw in another dead body.
Yeah. Oh, look,
make it even worse. Yeah.
This guy died. We're gonna say that.
Yeah, just throw it in there. He died mysteriously or whatever. Now he's part of the assassination mythos. Weezy, we are out. Yeah, we are almost at the 90-minute mark. Is there anything you'd like to add? I mean, I feel like we've pretty much covered it. Do you think there's more you'd like to add? Or
yeah, I mean, if anyone, I've done quite a few shows where I go into much more detail. I try to give you a little concise piece of various pieces. But if anyone wants more in depth, more coverage, I have a playlist on my Odyssey channel. And if you go to my Odyssey channel, go to playlist. I have a Lincoln Assassination playlist. I also cover a lot of the moon landings. I have a lot of moon landing shows. If anyone's interested in that, I'll be doing a moon landing show on Sunday. There was recently a debate between Bart Sabrell and astronaut
I
Charlie
saw
Duke.
that. Yeah, I saw
Charlie
that.
Duke. And so me and my Apollo detective friends who are engineers and whatnot, they are going to join me on Sunday, and we're going to be breaking down that debate. So if anyone's interested in those things, and yeah, I also have McGowan's audiobook uploaded as well there too.
What audiobook
That's
is it?
on Odyssey.
No, but
Uh,
which book of McGowan's do you have
the
audio?
Wagging the
Wagging the
Moondoggie.
Moondog. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a great series too.
I love it.
Yeah, so your Odyssey channel is the place to go.
Yeah, that's my last stand. I've lost like 4 YouTube channels over the years. So if I get taken down anywhere else, where I should still be doing my, Weezy's last stand, if you will, that will be on my Odyssey channel.
Have you gotten any of them back? Because mine magically reappeared a couple months ago.
I applied because everyone kept saying, "Oh, you gotta apply, you'll get yours back." I applied. I got a message from YouTube essentially saying, "Thank you for applying, but no thanks. You
It's so
you are
weird.
not welcome back."
It's so weird. Like I don't even know how I got mine back because I didn't even apply. I just saw it pop up one day. I saw a
Well,
comment. Somebody had made a comment. Yeah.
I want to do that caveat as well. I didn't drop a single F bomb. I'm proud of myself tonight. But if you like my content, but if you are easily offended with hard language, I may not be your cup of tea. I just want to give a fair warning. If you don't mind that, rough language here and there, then you may be interested in some of my content. But I do want to put that caveat because sometimes people listen to me and I get that. That's like the biggest thing that I get from people that they're like, I love your content, man, but I can't stand the swearing or the cussing. But I just made a special attempt out of respect for Mr. Ramsey here tonight. And so that's why you didn't hear a single one tonight.
Thanks. It keeps me out of trouble on YouTube. I don't know how long I'll keep my YouTube channels. You never know. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. They pop back up, but they can go away just as fast. So I have no idea. Like it's so strange. It's so like unlike stable. It's just like, okay, now you got it back. Now it's taken away. I had 4 taken away. So I got 3 back, but 1 is not back. But I
Yeah.
mean, I don't even know why it's kept setting up new YouTube channels. Because the other thing is they kind of trick you. Like I put time in another one for a year and then they took that away. So it's like they don't take it
Yeah.
away right away. It's like, okay, now you can put work into it. Now we'll take this one away. So who
Yeah,
knows?
I had one that I was on fire when I first started, and then I made a backup one, and then in one fell swoop, boom, both of
That
them
was it.
gone.
Yeah. You got
And
to keep backups of everything, guys. Everybody out there listening, keep backups because you can restream them. I've restreamed some information that didn't go to the YouTube channel, so I'm able to kind of like put old content out again. So I mean, just like McGowan, his work is still reverberating. It's still
oh
going
yeah,
around. People are still remembering his stuff. Like his work is so important. It's really increased its impact over time. I think even when he was alive, which is really incredible. People still listening to him. So
no,
I'm
and
glad that you're talking about it too. Yeah.
no, and that's why I invited you on. One of the big reasons, you had some actual
I mean, you
time
mentioned his
with
brother.
McGowan.
I knew his brother. I knew Craig. I used to talk to Craig all the time. I know that he's not. I don't know how well he's
He's
doing,
not
but
doing too good
yeah, I heard he
these days.
wasn't. Yeah, I heard he wasn't in great shape. But I was able to meet Dave. I saw him smoke like a chimney, so I know he was a
Yeah,
big time smoker.
yeah,
But I do have a signed copy of Weird Scenes. So I mean, at least
that's
I have a
awesome.
little bit. Yeah. So it's hard to believe he's been gone too because people still talk about him, man. His work is still meaningful.
Still hits. Yeah,
Well,
that's what I try to do in my little way, as
yeah,
little as a reach I may have. I just try to keep that legacy, that memory alive in my
yeah.
little way.
I think that's great. So you don't just have an Odyssey. You can see your stuff on Spotify too under What Is Truth podcast too, right?
Yeah, the video, you can see the videos there on Spotify.
So
I
the
just don't
videos
put
are
a lot of. I mean, it's awesome. Follow me on all the platforms that you can. But if you really enjoy my comment, make sure at least you follow me on Odyssey and then anywhere else you want. I wouldn't really recommend my YouTube. I do have a YouTube, but I rarely post anything there these days.
right. Like, what's the incentive? Like, you got to keep it
Yeah,
somewhere else. I've had really
Yeah.
good luck on Rumble. Like nobody's censored me or taken anything down. But Weezy, thanks for sharing all your knowledge about Lincoln and talking about it. There's some real the cover story doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't believe it.
No,
I don't
not at
believe it
all.
at all. It's there's always more to these stories, more things. I mean, I think a lot of people wanted Lincoln dead, even some of his so-called allies and people in his own political party and stuff like that. So it's not surprising that his work was done and they got rid of him, man. Like
Yeah.
I mean, you have to think people wanted to take him out all the time. So his bodyguard doesn't show up and goes drinking, and it's selected by Mary, and it's just this story
It's
has a lot
preposterous.
of holes. So yeah, it has a lot of
And I
holes.
just kind of skimmed through it tonight. So if you want more, I would recommend checking out that playlist. I literally have like 10 hours of content in my head, for a book. And maybe at one point, maybe I'll do a documentary. Maybe I'm not a book writer myself, and maybe I may have to do like a doc, and that might be the better route that I take. But it takes time for all these things. So
Right.
um trying to piece it together. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Ramsey.
Wheezy.
Truly
Thank you.
appreciate it. I need to get
Yeah.
you back on my show and we can
Yeah.
talk more of
Anytime. Anytime.
that circle.
Anytime. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening, everybody. And again, it's Wheezy, and we talked about Lincoln assassination. And check out his podcast, What Is Truth. I will put links in the show notes. Thanks, everybody. Take care.